I just recorded another video of me reading from this book, Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre. I will post that video tomorrow morning, but I kept it out because I wanted to just give an overview of my relationship with this story, not with this book specifically, but with the story of Jane Eyre, what it has meant to me over the years, how it always seemed to be to pop up at the right time. I've only read it once, and the time that I read it was happened kind of in the middle of my relationship with it, with the story. It first came to me in the form of the 1997 A&E movie version starring Samantha Morton and Ciarán Hinds as Jane and Rochester. It was my mom's favorite book, and that was the adaptation. There had been, I think the year before, was the Charlotte Gainsbourg adaptation, but this was the one that made its way into our house. That was, I guess, because we weren't really going to movies at the time, but this one was on TV, and we taped it off the TV and would just watch it over and over again. My brothers and I would, because we grew up in East Rochester, the town, not the east part of Rochester, but East Rochester, the village, and Mr. Rochester has this line in there, "Give my regards to Mr. Rochester," before Jane realizes that he is Mr. Rochester when they meet in Hay Lane. And my brothers and I would, and our friend from across the street would quote him saying, "Give my regards to Mr. East Rochester." So it stuck with us. Even though we were kids, we didn't get the darker implications of the Victorian Gothic story. We didn't understand the mad woman in the attic. That's actually a very disturbing thing. We managed to have fun with it, but it also just imprinted on me, at least. I don't know how my brothers feel about it. But it made a big impression on me. And so, well before I read the book, I was a huge fan. And then when I first got into musicals, or a couple of years after I got into musicals, but when I first got into Broadway, when Seussical had turned my musical interest toward The Great White Way, first musical theater season, Tony season, that I observed happening was 2000-2001, and I think it was December of that year that Jane Eyre, the musical, opened on Broadway. And not the first stage adaptation, but I believe the first musical theater adaptation. And so here was a story that I was already familiar with, already loved, and then this new form that I was falling in love with, musicals, and they came together, and there was a cast recording, and of course my way into interest in musicals was I liked to sing the songs, and so I got the cast recording, and I could sing along with Mr. Rochester. I could sing along with Jane too, but I was, at the time, my voice was getting deeper. I was going for a baritone sound, and so Mr. Rochester was the one singing in that range. He's got a couple of songs. As Good as You, great song. The one where he's a fortune teller, funny. And the Farewell Good Angel, not such a good song. If they revive it, they should rewrite that. Or not rewrite that song, just do a new song. I've got some ideas. And then he's got some duets with Jane. And for the most part, I really love the score. And I think that it depicts both characters very well, and all the other characters very well. From Blanche Ingram to Mrs. Fairfax. And what was I just about to say? Oh, and Marla Schoffel played Jane on Broadway, and then a couple of years after that, I saw her in My Fair Lady on tour. So that was a great thrill. So yeah, so movie, story, a quotable line. But then we watched the movie over and over again. I really got to like it. And then getting into musical theater, turning my focus towards Broadway, Jane Eyre the musical, perfect timing. There was a tie-in book re-release, Modern Library, I think, that used the same cover as the playbill and cast recording. So if I can find that somewhere, I don't actually own a copy of Jane Eyre. This belongs to the malevolent supernatural force I live with, probably by way of a parent or even a grandparent. It's Jane Eyre in 7 pieces. It was falling apart as I was reading it. But if I can find that, that would be a great copy to have. I'd love to have the musical tie-in copies of great books. So then a couple of years later, I go to college and there's Jane Eyre again in a couple of different ways. For one thing, I went as a musical theater major and I requested of my voice teachers that I be allowed to learn the Rochester songs. And this was in part because my whole first semester was very Jane Eyre themed. The musical that year was Cabaret, not Jane Eyre, but the person playing Sally Bowles was a big Jane Eyre fan. She had taken the same class that I was then currently taking, which was all about Jane Eyre. It was a freshman writing course where we would go through the novel Jane Eyre and also the prequel, Jean Riss's Wide Sargasso Sea, and we would write essays about it, and we would critique each other's essays. We'd pair up. One of my very best friends I met in that class, and we continued throughout college and to this day, looking at each other's writing when we want a little bit of help. And so I was giving Jane Eyre a lot of thought. There was a great TA for that class, and she inspired me to then be a TA in the class when it was taught again, and the teacher had no problem with that. She liked me. So once again, Jane Eyre, I'm starting college, and that is the only time that I ever actually read the book. I've seen a lot of, not all, but a lot of the movies. I eventually did see a local theater production of the musical with my Latin teacher's daughter as young Jane and an acquaintance from a musical theater summer program as Mr. Rochester. And but that is the first and only time I read the book. I think I went through it again when I was a TA, but not in as much detail because I wasn't actually writing papers at that time. So that was college once again. Nice to have something familiar when I'm starting this big, scary new chapter of my life. So then, since then, it's mostly been just kind of watching and rewatching the movies when a new movie comes along, watching that one, the Mia Wasikowska movie version. I like that very much. I think it is perhaps better crafted than the A&E movie version, but it doesn't have the affection from my having seen it when I was 10 and grown up with it. But it's my second favorite. And then there's the Ruth Wilson version, and I'm a big fan of Ruth Wilson. Watching Luther now for the first time, but his Dark Materials on HBO, she's great. I saw her on Broadway as the Fool and Cordelia, both roles, in the Glenda Jackson King Lear revival. And I got to see it twice, which was really great. And she's just in so many, she like pops up other places all over the place. Sometimes in bad movies, sometimes in good movies. Her version of Jane Eyre, 2006, I think, it came out around the time that I think I was a TA at the time, and we watched it in the class, and I like it, and I like it more now than I did then because I'm less of the attitude of, well, it's not the version that I love, and therefore I can't like it at all. There are degrees of appreciating things, but I think, I call it sexy Jane Eyre, and Jane Eyre is not supposed to be sexy. It's not that Jane Eyre, the character, or as a woman, wouldn't be appealing, but that's not how she would present herself, with the, I don't know, she just, it didn't seem quite right, but then I revisited it, and I do like it more. I like the performance. It just seems like she's too glamorous to be plain Jane. Jane is described and describes herself as plain, and Mia Wasikowska pulls that off, and Samantha Morton, Charlotte Gainsbourg. It just seemed like Ruth Wilson's version was too glamorous for Jane Eyre. Looked too glamorous. Again, how she looks and what that's what the visual people put on her, but the performance, I was able to more recently appreciate the performance, get past the she's too glamorous for Jane Eyre, and that is why I liked the adaptation better, seeing it more recently. So yeah, that is the story of me and Jane Eyre. I still have, it goes on because I have to hunt down my copy of the book. Ideally, the musical tie-in from 2001. In fact, I might just wait unless I find a different edition that I really like. I prefer paperbacks these days, but if I found a nice enough hardback, um, who knows? It's kind of like a treasure hunt. Like it's not a book that's someone's giving me that they picked out. It's not a new book that there's only one version of it. So if I want to read it, it's that one. And it's not like, well, I've kind of heard that I like this, or that I would like this. It's a classic, or it's well regarded, so I'm going to buy it used, and here's the copy. And whether or not I want to keep this copy will depend on if I like the book, because if I like the book, my experience is liking the book with that copy. Um, but with Jane Eyre, I already know I like the book. It is a classic, so I can go looking for the perfect copy, which is what I'm saying is that's a rare experience with a book. Gentle viewers, that'll be that for now. But tomorrow morning, a little bit of the story.